Well, there you are. Again, Charlie Greer podcast today. So, 31 years since Love Engineer CD release. What? Perhaps it's been 31 years. My God. Oh man, look at me. Oh, haggard up. Oh, before we start, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to support the channel, which you do. My Cash App handle is Charlie Greer Podcast. Let's do this. So, Love Engineer. I was in a band called Love Engineer. I was a singer. Heavy band, tuned down mostly like the D and G. And this is kind of before it kind of went mainstream to be doing that. We would use vintage amps. We would like Sound City, and eventually we had Marshall, but we had some like, non-volume or non-master volume, I should say. You have to just crank these things up to get to the distortion or doom or whatever. It's kind of a we're forgotten. Like nobody remembers the awesomeness or what have you. So 31 years. Here it is. 31 years. This is the only sealed copy I own of the Love Engineer CD. The only one. It might be the only sealed copy out there. Who knows? But yeah, this is it. I don't know if you guys can see this. Came out in 1992. Should have came out in 91. It's being in a band is just a tub of bullshit to put up with. We first released on our own a 3-song cassette. If you guys remember cassettes, we had like a 3-song demo basically, and then you make a bunch of those. And then you go to Kinko's and cut out the artwork and fit it into the. People don't understand the struggle, Then we put it into record store, like local record stores, and we did really well. It took us about a year to get our groove, to start like moving through the politics of clubs. Meaning, pardon me, you have to start like on a Monday, opening for some like Kiss tribute band or something. Which I love Kiss, but our first club gig in Love Engineer, I think, was opening for like a Kiss tribute band that didn't even wear makeup. They were just like, anyway, I love Kiss. But so you start on a Monday, you got to make X amount of dollars for the club. Then you do that. You can go Wednesdays, you got to make X amount of dollars. Then you can move on to Fridays and so forth. Then you start packing the club. You can get like weekend gigs and holidays like Halloween and New Year's Eve, whatever the hell. And then when other bands come through, you can like open up for like a bigger band. And that's what we got to that position where we'd open up for, like when Tool came through town, we opened for them, Prong, and other bands like Enough's Enough, and just whoever. One of the Melvins, those douchebags. So we had we started in like 90, I think, Love Engineer, or 91. Recorded the album in 91 and was going to release it. We were signed to an independent label. We were out of Champaign, Illinois. And this guy who owned an independent record store had wanted to start a label, and he signed up 3 bands, and then he crashed it before anything. He didn't release anything. So we wasted a bunch of time. Then eventually we released it on our own. We did get some artist development money from A&M Records, which artist development is, hey, here's a little bit of money. It's like a quarter, like within 4 months, we want to see, record some music, this, that, and the other, come back. And then, they don't do that anymore because it was a tax write-off. Also, the reason that A&M did that, because at the time, the biggest band they had, Soundgarden, we were kind of similar to that. So they would sign up everybody that's kind of competition to them and then shelf them. I didn't learn that till years later, but that's what happened to Love Engineer. And then, so this came out in 92, and we literally charted like the tri-state area. We were, and it's kind of crazy to think that this is the same year that like The Chronic came out, and, All those great albums. 92 was a good year. So was 91. Um, play behind this. Road Dog. People say, oh, I play. We played minimum 3 times a week. Minimum. We got to the point where we wouldn't even rehearse. We were just like, gig. And by then, you're getting better equipment. You're starting to get like roadies and sound people, and it was a thing to the point where. So our main club in Champaign, Illinois, was called Mabel's, and it's my favorite club of all time. There was another club in town called the Blind Pig, and for a while we played both. But Mabel's was like the bigger, better known. Blind Pig was more like underground. It was cool, I saw a shit ton of bands at Blind Pig. I played Blind Pig like the first month it opened, maybe the first week. I played when the stage was kind of sideways before they anyway. And Love Engineer was a wrecking ball. I mean, we were a bunch of gearheads. We would slay. We would just that's why I've got tinnitus now. We're loud, and we were actually a good band. We would before we stopped rehearsing, because we didn't need to. We would rehearse like 3 times a week. We helped other bands out. There's a ton of bands out there that got their first like club gig opening for Love Engineer. I like to help dudes out, and I was in 92. I was 21. I was 21 when this came out. Matter of fact, when this came out, I didn't even have a CD player. I had to go like buy a CD player. And this dude that's on the cover, if you can see him, he's just a drunk guy at Mardi Gras from the 70s. We had a photographer. We licensed that. And anyway, it's called Wall of Ear. People think it's Wall of Fear. It's actually Wall of Ear. You can see that. Wall of Ear. I don't know why it's not up on YouTube. I searched it. There's nothing up there. I Googled before I started doing this podcast right now. I Googled Love Engineer, and there was only a few images. Maybe people were selling a few CDs. It used to be bootlegged in Europe. I don't know if it still is. It used to go for quite a bit of money in Europe. But I never saw any of that. And I was 21. Didn't have a CD player. Out of all of my friends or that scene we were in, we were the first to release an album. Believe it or not, in like 92, it was expensive to do CDs. It was almost unheard of unless you had like major backing, like a major label or something like that. We were smart. Well, see what happened when we got burnt by that first indie label, the record store guy. We were like, wait a minute, man, that just it caused some aggravation. So we were like, we don't want to deal with. And also A&M kind of passed on us. We were just like, you know what? Let's just do it ourselves. We're already doing all this stuff. Perhaps we can do it ourselves. And we did. We just I forgot what we had to, and you have to jump through hoops. We recorded this on a Fostex, like reel-to-reel, like 8-track. Analog. I think it's like 1/2 inch. The guitarist Darren, he produced it. He's a wizard. I did the vocals in the bathroom because of the tile and the old school like bathtub. It does like this natural reverb, and somehow he'd figure that out, or we'd heard it, or something like that. So we ended up doing that. And what I remember the most, a lot of it I don't remember because it was going by so fast, and the drinking and everything else. I mean, it was just the sad thing is I remember a few gigs that were fun, but mostly what I remember are like the worst hangovers you can ever imagine. And also being in a van somewhere, like in the Midwest, like, first you're like, yeah, I want to get in the van and play. Now you don't. No, you don't want to. You swamp ass, you're hungover. No. Playing like Milwaukee, some shithole. I shouldn't say shithole, but a lot of times you're not paired with the best bands, or the club doesn't promote, so there's hardly anybody there, or it's a friggin' it is what it is. Because we would play the Midwest. We would play mostly Chicago, well, Champaign, Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee. That was kind of our and some of these, I'm not going to name names, but some of these bands from Chicago and that area who I used to like let backstage and give beer to and this, that, and the other became like more successful. And I haven't heard shit from them. You know, you never hear from like, you know, throw an OG a little bone. No, they and some of these bands were like glam bands at the time. Again, in the early 90s, people were still like wearing lipstick and woo and like feather boas and shit, which it's cool. You know, I mean, I never did it, but we kind of, at the time, Nirvana had just broke, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. Quite honestly, I didn't like any of that. I thought Soundgarden, out of all those, I thought Soundgarden was, but my favorite Seattle band was, like more obscure, like Flop. I like Screaming Trees. At this time, my favorite band was out of Chicago, Material Issue. I was more into pop. You know, the Pixies and the Smiths and the and my girlfriend at the time listened to a lot of that stuff. So you know that's what you end up listening to because. But good times, really good times. You just don't remember like the like every gig. And every once in a while on Facebook, there's a Mabel's fan club or something, or people, whatever, and they'll put a calendar of like, you know, who played that month, and we'll be on there or whatever. And I'll see a band we play. I was like, oh, okay. Trying to remember the gig, can't. And then people like comment like, oh, Charlie, do you remember? No, perhaps I don't, because I, you know, again, I was drinking. Just we would, you know, it was the 90s, especially the early 90s. I was 21 in Champaign, Urbana, Illinois, which is like a college town. It was just party central, you know. It sucks that I just remember these hangovers. It's like, just like, and then you have to have another gig. You got to get up and do it again. My God. And sometimes we would be like in 93, we played over 150 gigs that year. Probably more. I just know that I remember and this is another thing I should have done and I regret. I didn't keep any of our merch. I didn't keep any of the t-shirts or posters or flyers or fanzine articles or covers, whatever. I thought that was kind of cheesy. But then later on, I went into people's houses and they've got like a framed Love Engineer. I'm like, what the? Oh my God, I should have. No, I didn't. You live and learn. But at the time, when I went home, I lived with my girlfriend at the time. I didn't want to deal with any of that because that's what I was submerged, pickled in. So I needed like an oasis. We didn't have any of that in our house. And people would come over and think it's strange. Like, why aren't you guys? Because everybody would plaster this and that and the other thing. No, we didn't do any of that. We kept it feng shui, like clean. I didn't have anything around. Matter of fact, we didn't even have a stereo. I had a boom box. We were more into like playing like, anyway. I didn't have it around. That also pushed me to do more. I'm not focusing on well, what we did have in there was art. We had a lot of art. O'Keeffe, you know, Van Gogh, Picasso, you know, poster art. You know, we didn't have real pieces of art. Also, I didn't want to be like looking at that. You know, you want to move on. You want to like, yeah, it's cool, but you want to. For me, this is my humble opinion. Was I didn't want to dawn on that. I wanted to go ahead and create more. I wanted to, you know, yeah, that was cool. Whatever. Let's go on. So that came out 92. We gigged like you would not. We didn't have a tour bus. We had a van. Eventually, we had like, at one time we might have had two vans, but we also had cars and vans. Um, and just road dogging, like all over Illinois, mostly Illinois. Every place you could think of in Illinois. I'm talking about Bloomington and Springfield and uh, Peoria and Chicago, and then Indiana. I shouldn't say forget Indiana. We'd play in Danville, and well, that's in Illinois, but like Terre Haute and maybe Indianapolis. I know the last Love Engineer gig was in Indiana at some kind of benefit for a biker who'd gotten a car wreck or something, or wrecked his motorcycle or something, and we were hired to play. It was a big, like a UFW hall. It was like a huge, and of course we got like ossified drunk, loud. We were loud. We had like the bass rig alone was 4 15s. So 2 cabs each had 2 15-inch speakers. So there's 2 of those. There's 4 15s, and on top of those there were 2 10s. Then the Galen Kruger heads or whatever. On the other side, Darren had the guitarist had like a Marshall JMC 800. I know we had that Sound City. We'd had some Hughes and Kettner cabs and some Marshall. So it just depended. Depending on, we could have like 4 412s. Sometimes if you're like this road dog, you might just have one. We might have took just one of those cabs. It just depends on the gig. If we were playing in town at Mabel's, we'd hire another sound person. We would hire rain lights and smoke machines and this, that, and the other. And I remember for a while, if we were playing at Mabel's, we were 700 in the hole before the gig started because we'd paid the extra sound guy, lighting, smoke machine. We owned our own smoke machines too, but those are kind of hit and miss. Fan lights, whatever they were. I forgot a lot of this stuff. And you got to get there and hang it up. And we had roadies, not that toured with us, but like, got local guys that, we pay. And we were a show. We wanted to look like we were like $1 million band, which we did. You went to a Lovener show. Better bring your earplugs. It was fucking loud, thunderous, too loud. Looking back on it, it was just like, my God. And we'd leave people hanging, meaning we would want to go on late. We would want to go on it so we usually have like a band or two open for us. Then we'd hit the stage at like midnight, 11:30, maybe 11, and just mow through. A lot of these bands we open for, we just smoked these bands. You think you got a good band, and I shouldn't be saying it, gloat, but I'm going to gloat a little bit. We were a really tight band because that's all we did. That's all we did besides our girlfriends. That's all we pumped every little inch of just everything put into the band. People were telling us, you guys are the next big thing, and we had interest. We had like we would do showcases for major labels, Geffen, Elektra. We won like the Ticketmaster Battle of the Bands in Illinois or something. We won some money and some equipment or whatever. We had a Budweiser endorsement for a while where they would, they'd pay for like local advertising. And then this is the beginning of like alt rock and shoegazer rock. So people thought like, oh yeah, it's a corporate, but it was awesome to be driving around town and be like, Friday night, Love Engineer, label, Budweiser present. I thought it was cool. Like, wow, this is awesome. And they'd send like Bud girls and have a table. And what Budweiser would do, they would print posters and they'd have like a Budweiser logo on the bottom, or our t-shirts might have like a Budweiser patch on or some kind of logo here. And a lot of other bands like, you guys are sellouts, you're corporate. Like, what do you think we're doing this? What you want to be, huh? Do you want to be playing in a closet? No, you don't want to be, that's what you're supposed to do. So for like a year, we had that Budweiser endorsement. We caused a riot at one gig. There was a place called Cam's, and it was like a fraternity bar. It was right there on campus, and it wasn't like a hit place to play, but and they this is the truth. All they sold was they had these hooks on the roof and these empty like milk jugs, like a gallon milk jug, and you'd grab one and they'd fill it for you for $5. And everybody's walking around with a milk jug, just these frat dude, just and girl. It was maddening. So they started doing gigs there. We played there, and it was a riot started. They rushed the stage. Matter of fact, we got robbed. They stole all of our shit. Not our gear, well, some of our gear, but I remember they stole all our merch, and posters and t-shirts, whatever. And then after a while, there all these frat boys walking around with like Love Engineer t-shirts. They stole my jacket. They stole my herb and my cigarette. Yeah, it was a thing. And then they were trying to blame us. Like we got in some, they had like a news thing about it in the newspaper, like Love Engineer. Well, I mean, it's rock and roll. Then they quit having bands. I think we were the last band to play Cams. It was KAM, Cams. And I never went there. I did, it wasn't like in town, it was kind of known as like to stay away. It's just like a frat boy, puke everywhere. Riot, like out in the streets. It's like, crazy. Pardon me, we didn't mean to. We were just playing. And the gig lasted like maybe 3 or 4 songs before a tidal wave of drunk, frat boys. But at the time, like, and we were like one of so the scene was split in Champaign-Urbana. There was like Mabel's and Blind Pig, and then other places like Tritos Uptown and this, that, and that. So it was split between like the rock and roll bands, like the hard rock bands, and then these like, alternative. But since we were kind of in the middle, we kind of like, split that we could play at different places. Like we're one of the only bands that, I mean, some other bands, but we would, for one, we'd sell out. We had a huge following, and but we weren't. Some bands were just connected to a certain scene, and it was like the same 70 to 100 people at their gigs. Didn't matter what band, it was the same 70, 100 people. And of course, a lot of these people are like rich college kids with like connections, and but when that came out, our CD came out, we were getting national reviews. We were getting from San Francisco to New York, and there were band labels, especially in New York. We got a lot of interest out of New York, but again, we'd been burnt. We didn't want to give up. Also, we learned the business. We started learning like, wait a minute, you got to sign over everything, we'll just do our own thing unless they give us this huge advance. This never happened. And also the band didn't get along. I was the youngest in the band. Like we broke up in like 94, 95, and I was only like 23, 24 by the time it was over. So they were older than me. So when the album came out, I was 21. Those guys were about like 28. They'd been in other bands, and they just thought I was a young, and I was wild. But we never would, like there, we would hang out. I mean, at the band, we had a band house. It was the bass player's house. Where we rehearsed. We would hang out after rehearsal and drink some beers and stuff, and we would throw parties. But it wasn't like, let's go fishing or let's go to the movies or none of that. None of that. I was usually hanging out with my girlfriend, or I had other friends like my age. And it was more business-like. It was more like, hey, we're in this, but and of course I could call them and they would, but it was more, we kept it like it was business. And after that, like in every other band I've ever been in, we did a lot more stuff together. Love Engineer wasn't like that. We were more serious. It was more like a business. It was more like, hey, this is what we got to do. Da, da, da. We'll have some beers and then but good times. I miss those days. I wish I could remember a lot of it, but I just can't. I don't remember. I do remember like some of the weird stuff. Like I got my arm broken on stage. I got knocked out a couple times. Like people throwing fucking like empty pitchers of beer or like full beer bottles. I lost teeth. Um, Matter of fact, when I got my arm broken and I had to have a cast, and I had to do like a shit ton of gigs with a cast on. And I remember there was an interview we did with like some kind of Midwest fanzine or something, some newspaper, and they were all they wanted to talk about was my broken arm. So I broke my arm on stage, ossified drunk. The next day, I waited till the next day. And I'd even showered and everything. And I went into the hospital and they were like, we can smell booze on you. We can't, And I was like, no, I drank last night. And then I blew, like I was still drunk. They wouldn't admit me. So I had to come back like the next day. And then they had to set my arm, which was a bitch. They had like a crack it again. Then I had to wear this stinky cast. I don't know if you've ever had a cast, like a real hard one, for like months, because I broke it pretty bad. We were wild. It got pretty wild. And I think Mabel's held I don't know, 700 people, because there was 2 levels. I might be wrong. I don't know what the capacity was. Could have been 350. It had to be over 350. And we would sell it out. And we got to the point where we'd play like Halloween both nights or the whole weekend. And there were other great bands, and there were bands coming through town. I met a shit ton of other bands, and open for. And I forget a lot of times. Every once in a while, I'll come across a list of bands we opened for, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot you." And then when I moved to LA in '98, people knew me. Like when I started getting in my own like music thing out there, people were like, "You're from Charlie from Lovenger." Like, what the? I'd have moved out there long before, because Lovenger technically broke up in '94, but we had a booking agent, like manager out of Chicago, and so we had signed something or other, and so he booked our gigs, so we had to do it into like '95. And that was a drag, because by then I'd moved to St. Louis, and it was like, oh my God, I had to drive to Champaign, get to the band house, load out, get in the van, head to wherever, come back, and head back to St. It was a drag. Hungover, you're just. And this is another reason why we had hangover. By then, we had a rider. We had it like a guarantee, which I think was only like $250. That was the minimum we'd play, and then you could get like, if so many people showed up. I forgot how the thing was, but we at least need $250 minimum. Plus, we needed like a case of beer or 2. It might have been 4 cases of beer. Probably Jack Daniels. Sometimes we wanted food. It just depended on the. But I knew we had a guarantee, so that's what we drank like. We were somewhere playing this big club, and you show up like. First you show up during the day, like 6, 7. Club doesn't open until like 10, and you load in, sound check, and then everything's set up, and then other bands go on. So you got a lot of farting around to do, and we drink. Of course, we had a backstage area, and we had all these, drink all this beer. We had a crew of sometimes probably a minimum of 4, but up to like 8 people, maybe more, and then girlfriends if they wanted to come, whatever. We're at this club, and they after the gig, they're like, "You guys broke the drinking record." And we're like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, you drank. It was held by nuclear assault." And we're like, "Are you shitting me?" And they're like, "Yeah, there was a lot more of them than you guys." I'm like, what the fuck? But I mean, you're young. I could drink a case of beer by myself. So whatever else everybody was doing, and shots of tequila, and all, crazy. Granted, I'm having a beer now, but I'll drink once a week, usually on Fridays, which today's Friday. I have a few beers, but man, not like we used to. Probably every day we drank. I'm pretty sure we did. And then on the gigs, we would just, and a lot of times I would go on stage drunk. I hate to admit this, but not too drunk. And then sweating all that out, it kind of sober you up. and then you would start drinking later. And a lot of times that was in the middle of the night. I mean, it maybe was closed at 1 or 1:30, and usually there was like an after party, or we were doing something, or for someone's friend, or they let us stay at the club later. You're just drinking all kinds of, and of course, there's just a sea of drugs around. I wasn't into drugs. I've, you know, and that's just a fucked up thing because people think like I'm a junkie or I was a junkie. None of that. I was more of like a drunk and like a stoner. I turned down drugs. It just didn't. I was too busy writing songs and having to keep my head on my head to do these gigs. But good times. I had a lot of good times. None of the guys in Love Engineer keep in contact. I mean, I haven't heard from those guys in forever. I'm sure if we were together right now, I'd be like, oh my God. But pardon me, it's not a bad thing. You just move on. We weren't that close in the first place. We were just bandmates. And we probably did not 1,000 gigs, but close to it. Maybe we did. Who knows? There were times we would do like every day. We were, if it was like in the college town, there were these homecoming or whatever the hell it was. So there was time. I remember there was times where we played like 11 days in a row, 8 days in a row. I don't think we did 2 gigs in a day though. Might have. Who knows? Perhaps we did. I just don't remember. But good times. I don't regret a thing. And I wish somebody would re-release that. And it's weird that it's not on YouTube. You would think that the fans would have slapped it up there. And my computer, I don't have like a CD, or I'd rip it and throw it up there. And when I Googled earlier, before I started this podcast, Love Engineer, I did see some copies on like eBay for like $10. So that's good because they were going the bootlegs in Europe were going for shit $100 or something. And we didn't get any of that. We don't get any of that bootleg money. But yeah, if you want, you could probably find it on eBay. I don't know why it's not on YouTube. It used to be. I know that it got pulled down. And also, this is a weird thing. Because this was through ASCAP. It's publishing companies. So we were I've been with both. I've been with ASCAP and BMI. And those are the companies that track your publishing. I'm pretty sure that publishing, I don't know how, is owned by BBC Two. Not even the BBC, the BBC Two. And what I found out through a lawyer is BBC Two just kind of is like a big whale that engulfs every kind of like intellectual property. That's what I was told. Because I was trying to, I was going to re-release it through my own label. I used to have like a little vanity label called Rockstar 71 Records that I released my stuff through. And it wasn't worth the hassle. And when I think I put Love Engineer up, and YouTube, it got struck for copyright violation. I don't know. I mean, you would think that I would own it, or the guys in the band, because what our deal is they wrote the music, I wrote all the melodies and the lyrics, and we split everything. Like everybody got a quarter of we split it evenly. We didn't want anybody to, but who knows? You would think that a label would pick this, because we were before that sound of that album is been copied by a million bands. And nobody sounded like that. I mean, there might have been a few, like Soundgarden was kind of doing that sound. We were more stoner doom than Soundgarden. Again, I like Soundgarden. Oh, when I Googled Love Engineer, there's something that says that we opened for Soundgarden. We didn't open for Soundgarden, or I don't remember we did. Now, we might have played like some kind of side stage at a festival where Soundgarden was headlining or playing, but we never opened for Sound, meaning we were, no, we didn't. Perhaps, again, we might have played a side stage, and Soundgarden was on the main stage. Something like that might have happened. I just don't remember. We did play state fairs. I mean, I used to. There's so much stupid shit. Like one time I think we were playing a state first, and they're like, "Oh, George Thorogood wants to meet you," and I blew him off because I had to go like smoke a joint with somebody or something. It's just stupid. I wish I would have. And then when I was like, "Oh, I'll be there," and I did. This didn't happen. Sorry, George. It wasn't like I was like, "Man, I'm gonna meet George Thorogood." No, I just came off stage and anyway. I didn't blow off. It just something else happened, and I forgot. What are you gonna do? But yeah, Love Engineer, sealed copy, the only one. But I see there's a split in the plastic. It might open up. It might. This is the only sealed copy I have. And I forgot how many of these were pressed. I don't know. Love Engineer. I used to be back in the 90s. I could go into a record store and go in the used section, and more than likely I'd find a copy of that. And that's most of the copies that I have are that's how I got them. I had to buy my own album, and a few times I'd go up to the record store. I was like, "Hey man, this is my band. I'm in Love Engineer. Can I get a discount?" No, no, you got to buy it. Yeah. But every time I'm in record stores have disappeared. But anytime I was in a record store, I'd go through the L section, and there you go. Love Engineer. Hey, I've been into some of. I used to ask, like, "Hey, do you hear Love Engineer?" No, man, I've never heard of that. Go over there, and there it is. Sometimes I knew, like they have like a little section. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, but yeah, good times. After that, I never was just a lead singer. After Love Engineer, I switched to playing guitar and singing, and pretty much lowered the volume. It became more of like a power trio. My songwriting changed. The Love Engineer was more like math rock, like it was complicated. So I switched like 3-chord rock and roll. Like I don't want to. And I never people. I mean, it's been 31 years. I used to be not recognized. They're like, "Oh, Charlie, Love Engineer." Not anymore. Times change. People move on. People get old. People die. They're all dead. But yeah, good times. I miss those times. But yeah, I haven't done a podcast in over a month, I think. Maybe 2 months. Who knows? But I thought I'd come on here. I realized Love Engineer. First, I thought it was like 30 years. Like, my God, 30 years. 31 years since that album came out. It's dear Lord. I wasn't 31 years old I was 21 when it came out. You just don't think that, like, what in who would we? Oh well. But I should be doing more podcasts. I'm gonna start because what I did is I went back to school. I did some schooling this summer, and I'm eventually I'm gonna get my bachelor's, but for now I just got anyway. Yeah, so perhaps I'll come back. But I love y'all. Be blessed. Cheers.